Hi and welcome to Flutter Lab. Today we will build this staggered menu animation, and for that we will have a closer look at some of Flutter's animation parts. On top of the main function, we change the color of the status bar. For that we need to import services.dart, and further down we hide the debug banner from the emulator and pass in myFlipIcon as a home widget. myFlipIcons is a stateful widget. On top we initialize two lists. One is holding colors and the other one the icons for our menu. In the build method we return a scaffold with an app bar and a spotty a safe area with a stack that for now contains a container and a list view builder. We set the item count of our list view builder to our icons list length, so we can easily adjust our menu size later on. The list view builder returns a container that holds our menu items, and in between we add a line widget that gives us the possibility to control the position of our menu. For this kind of explicit animations, we're going to need an animation controller, and that's what we're going to add first. But let's have a quick look at what Flutter Docs has to say about animation controllers. An animation controller is an object that generates a new value whenever the hardware is ready for a new frame. And by default, it produces the value from 0 to 1 during a given duration. Alright, so let's try to initialize our controller. As we did see in the example, we pass in a vsync and the duration argument. Okay, but what is the vsync argument for? Flutter documentation says the presence of vsync prevents off-screen animations from consuming unnecessary resources. You can use your stateful object as the vsync by adding single-ticker provider state mixing to the class definition. So let's add this mixin, and this will clear our vsync error we had before. The ticker provider fires an event for each frame and tells our animation controller the duration of the last frame. And we dispose the controller when it's not used anymore to prevent memory leaks. The next step is to connect our animation controller with our menu items, and for that we can use an animated builder. So here we can pass in our animation controller as argument to the animation parameter. We then pass a context and a child to the builder method. And next we cut and paste our menu item into the animated builder so it wraps around it. To check if the controller delivers what it promises, we quickly add a print statement and then do a hot restart. As we can see, the current controller value stays at 0. That is because we haven't yet told the controller to start. So for now we add controller.forward to init state, do a hot restart, and now we get our values from 0 to 1. In my opinion, the transform widget is one of the most powerful widgets when it comes to animation. As we can see in the documentation, we need to pass in transform argument in the form of a matrix 4. In addition, we're going to use the origin property as this controls the center of our rotation. An offset of 0, 0 means that our center of rotation is the top left corner. And as we have seen in the docs, we need to pass a matrix 4 into transform. But hold on, what is this dot identity all about? As the name says, this is the so-called identity matrix that gives us the possibility to scale, translate, or rotate a widget. So for example, the diagonal values from top left to bottom right give us the possibility to scale a widget in only one or all directions. However, we will not dive any deeper into matrix 4, but I'll put some links in the description in case you want to. Luckily, Flutter offers an easy way to manipulate these values. For the perception of depth, we can use the setEntry method to change a value in our matrix. In addition, we use the rotateX method and start with a value of 0 to see if we get the same result. Okay, that looks good so far, but before we continue, we quickly look at the values that we can pass into the rotateX method. RotateX takes an angle in radians. And as we want our items to rotate between 0 and 90 degrees, we can see in this graphic that 90 degrees is equal to pi divided by 2. We want our starting position at minus 90 degrees, so we enter minus pi divided by 2. So let's do a hot restart and see what we get. Great, and now we build in the controller in a way that we start at minus 90 degrees rotation when controller's value is 0 and end at 0 degrees rotation when controller's value is 1. With the curved animation class, we can apply a curve to a linear animation like the one produced by our controller. For that, we pass our controller and the curve of our choice to the constructor. Okay, but we're still facing the issue that our items animate at the same time. So this is a time where our silent action hero comes into play, the interval class. For now, the two most important things we need to know about the interval class is first, it's a curve, and second, it can be used to delay an animation. And we pass a begin value, an end value, and a curve to its constructor. Before jumping back to code, let's have a look at the graphical representation of an interval. For that, we quickly recap what our animation controller does. We see here that by default, the animation controller linearly produces values from 0 to 1 during a given duration, which in our case is 400 milliseconds. By using an interval, we can tell the animation to play only during a fraction of the whole time. In this example, the animation will play from a fraction of 0.4 to 0.6 of the whole time available. In other words, it plays from 160 to 240 milliseconds, thus is 5 times faster than with the animation controller. So for our menu animation, we're just chaining intervals to get a so-called staggered animation. So what we're left with is calculate the fraction, which is in our case 1 divided by these 5 items. And then we can use the list view builder's index, so the first menu item animates in the interval from 0 to 0.2, the second one from 0.2 to 0.4, and so on. So let's do a hot restart and see if this is working. Great, that works as expected, so let's add some final touches. First, we need a function that plays our animation forward and backward. We delete controller.forward from init state and build a play animation function. That function we're going to add to our gesture detector of our menu icon. Our controller has some very useful properties. One of them is completed. It returns true when the animation has stopped at the end. If it has, we want the animation to reverse, otherwise it should play forward. So let's do a hot restart and see if this is working. Alright, this is exactly what we wanted. If we don't like our animation speed, we can easily adjust our animation controller's duration. We probably want this menu to navigate between different app pages. For demonstration purposes, we add a page index variable to keep track of the active page. To spice things up a little bit, we add the current page icon and its color. That looks good, so what we're left to do is wrap our menu items with a gesture detector. In the onTap method of the gesture detector, we set the state of our page index to the current index of the list view builder, and we call the play animation function so the menu is closing when an item is tapped. Great, that's exactly what we wanted. To wrap things up, we quickly check if we easily can extend our menu as planned. So we should be able to add elements to our color and icons list to get a new fully functioning menu item. Alright, that's exactly what we wanted. Before we end our experiment, let's have a quick look at how we can modify our animation. So for example, we can remove our align widget that wraps around our item container, and that will result in our containers to stretch for the whole screen width. Another way of quickly changing the animation is changing the rotation axis. So now our menu items rotate from the left and not from top down anymore. Alright, that's it so far. As this is the very first video on this channel, I would highly appreciate your feedback or some wishes for future videos down in the comments. And by the way, you can find the link to the GitHub repository with the code for this project and other resources in the description of this video. If you don't want to miss any future videos, for example like this cool 3D page transition animation, then feel free to hit the subscribe button. Thanks very much for watching and see you in the next video.